I still remember the way the words stung that night. My mother's voice cut through the kitchen air like a verdict, sharp and heavy. "You're selfish, Madeline." I froze, my hands gripping the edge of the countertop, as though it might steady me. Across the table sat my younger brother Ryan, eyes shining with the certainty that the world owed him another chance. My father's silence was worse than anger. His nod toward Ryan spoke volumes. In that moment, it felt as if the home I grew up in had turned into a courtroom, and I was the accused. They wanted me to give it all, every dollar I had saved over a decade, 160,000 painstakingly earned dollars. Not for an emergency, not for a shared dream, but for Ryan's latest grand idea, a luxury lounge in Nashville. He painted it like a paradise, velvet sofas, sparkling chandeliers, a jazz band every night. My parents leaned forward as if he were unveiling the future. I knew the script too well. Ryan dreamed, they applauded, and when the dream collapsed, someone else, usually me, paid the price. It wasn't just about money, it was about years of being invisible in my own family's story. I thought about the long nights of graduate school, the weekends spent clipping coupons, the years of saying no to dinners out so I could say yes to my future. I had carried my own weight, built my own safety net. And yet here I was, cast as the villain, because I wouldn't pour my life savings into another of Ryan's fragile castles. Stability, my parents said, meant I could always save more. But what they really meant was, you don't matter as much. I wanted to shout to List every time they had ignored my milestones, every diploma, every promotion, because Ryan's spark demanded the spotlight. But I didn't. Instead, I took a breath and said the hardest word I've ever spoken aloud. No. The silence afterward felt endless, like the pause before thunder. Then came the storm. My mother's tears, my father's disappointment, Ryan's smirk, as he hissed that I had always been jealous. I looked at their faces, so certain, so unwilling to see me. And something inside me shifted. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of their disapproval. I was tired of being the family's endless supply. That night upstairs in my childhood room, I sat on the bed and let the weight of it all settle. The suitcase I had packed weeks before sat waiting in the corner. Deep down, I had known this confrontation was coming. Ryan's charm always came with a bill, and my parents always paid it with my future. But this time, I had a different plan. Tomorrow, I would be boarding a plane across the Atlantic, stepping into a life built on my own terms. They would call me selfish. They would call me boring. But I would finally call myself free. Growing up in the Brooks household was like living in a play where I was cast as the background character. My brother Ryan was the star, dazzling, unpredictable, the one everyone leaned in to watch. I still remember when he won a small music contest in middle school, our parents threw a party, invited neighbors, and framed the certificate in the hallway. A week later, I earned top marks at the state math competition. No party, no frame, not even a dinner out. They smiled, of course, but then quickly turned the conversation back to Ryan's natural spark. This pattern repeated itself in different forms. When I earned a full scholarship to college, my parents barely mentioned it at Thanksgiving. That same weekend, Ryan announced his plan to launch an online clothing brand, and suddenly, he was the toast of the table. They spoke about investors, about vision, about how exciting it was to see someone bold enough to take risks. Months later, when the website quietly went offline, no one mentioned the credit card debt he had left behind. Instead, they urged me to be supportive, to believe in his next big thing. It took me years to realize that what I was experiencing had a name: the golden child syndrome. In many American families, one child is chosen consciously or not as the visionary, while the other becomes the responsible shadow. The golden child receives attention, applause, and endless second chances. The other child is expected to stay steady, invisible, always reliable. It wasn't that my parents hated me, they just never noticed me in the same way. Their eyes always sparkled for Ryan, while mine were expected to sparkle on my own time. The danger of this pattern is subtle but powerful. Parents believe they are encouraging talent, but in reality, they are crippling both children. The golden child learns entitlement without resilience, while the shadow child learns to equate invisibility with safety. I spent years believing that if I just worked harder, achieved more, maybe they would finally see me. But recognition never came. And Ryan, cushioned by praise, never developed the discipline to sustain his ventures. The cycle continued, fueled by hope denial and a strange pride that excused every failure as experience. Looking back, the lesson is clear. Families don't always give equal recognition, but your worth cannot be measured by applause at the dinner table. The truth is, steady effort builds real futures. I carried that realization like a secret lantern, one that would later guide me when the accusations grew louder. But at the time, it was just a quiet understanding tucked deep inside. And that quiet understanding set the stage for the hardest word I would ever speak to my family, a word that would break the cycle forever. The night I finally said no is etched in my memory like a scar. Ryan leaned across the table, spinning a vision of velvet curtains and sparkling glasses, his voice dripping with confidence. My parents nodded in rhythm, already picturing the glamorous opening night. Then Ryan looked at me, eyes expectant, and asked for every cent of my savings. $160,000, the safety net I had built from years of quiet sacrifice. My heart raced, but my voice came out steady. I can't do that. The room went silent, as if I had spoken a foreign language. It wasn't just a refusal. It was rebellion. In my family, Ryan's dreams were sacred, unquestionable, while my role was to support finance or simply disappear. Saying no shattered the unwritten script. My mother's face crumpled in disbelief, my father's voice hardened as he accused me of being cold, ungrateful. Ryan smirked as though he had finally proven his theory that I was jealous, incapable of generosity. But inside, something unexpected rose in me, not guilt, but a strange, quiet strength. For the first time, I realized I was allowed to protect my future. This moment isn't unique to me. I've spoken with friends who became the reliable sibling in their families. One gave up her savings to bail out a brother's failing restaurant, only to spend years recovering financially. Another sacrificed her graduate program so her sister could chase an acting career that never took off. These aren't isolated stories, they're patterns. Families often place the burden of stability on one child, mistaking reliability for endless capacity. The shadow sibling learns to say yes until there's nothing left, money, energy, or self-worth. That night, I decided I wouldn't be another cautionary tale. What I learned is that no is not cruelty, it is a boundary. Boundaries are the fences that protect the garden of our lives. Without them, others can trample over what we've worked so hard to cultivate. And yet, in many families, boundaries are treated like betrayal. We are told that love means endless sacrifice, but love without respect is exploitation. By saying no, I wasn't closing the door on my family. I was simply choosing not to bankrupt myself for someone else's experiment. It was a choice for balance, for dignity, for my own hard-won future. That decision was the crack that let the light in. It didn't solve everything. My parents still cried, Ryan still accused, and I still carried the sting of their words. But it gave me a glimpse of the life I could have if I stopped playing the role they had written for me. And that glimpse became a plan. Because while Ryan dreamed of lounges in Nashville, I had been quietly preparing for something real, an ocean away. That night of refusal became the bridge to my next chapter, the chapter that began with a flight to London. The morning I boarded the flight to London, I carried more than a suitcase. I carried years of being overlooked, underestimated, and misunderstood. My ticket wasn't just an escape, it was a declaration my life was finally mine to shape. As the plane lifted off, I looked out over the Atlantic and felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. Behind me were the endless arguments, the guilt-laden phone calls, the pressure to save someone else's dream. Ahead was possibility wide and uncharted. For the first time, I wasn't running from something. I was moving toward something. Arriving in London was like stepping into a storybook, written in a language I half understood. The air smelled of rain and roasted coffee, the double-decker buses rumbled past, and the Thames curled through the city like a ribbon of history. I found a small flat on South Bank, nothing fancy, just enough space for a desk, a kettle, and a view of the skyline that glowed at night. Every sound felt new, the hum of the underground, the chatter of strangers and accents that made me smile. It was both overwhelming and exhilarating. I felt anonymous, and I loved it. Starting a new chapter abroad is never as effortless as Instagram makes it look. There were moments I felt like an outsider fumbling with coins at the grocery store, or getting lost on the train to work. I missed familiar faces, American comfort food, even the small-town quirks I used to roll my eyes at. But every stumble reminded me why I was here. Growth rarely feels comfortable. Real change comes with awkward starts, with moments where you question everything. The difference was that in London, my stumbles were mine to own. They weren't judged, mocked, or overshadowed. They were simply part of living. I realized something important: leaving isn't always about escape. Sometimes it's about expansion. Many people hesitate to leave their hometowns, even when those places no longer fit them, because they fear being labeled disloyal. I used to feel that too. But stepping into London showed me a truth I wish I had learned sooner: you can love where you came from, while still choosing a future that belongs only to you. Staying small for the sake of others doesn't make you noble. It only makes you invisible. My journey proved that change, though scary, can be the most loyal act to yourself. As I settled into my role as Director of Strategy at a renewable energy firm, I felt purpose blossom in ways I had never experienced. Each meeting, each negotiation was demanding, yes, but also deeply fulfilling. My work wasn't just numbers on a screen, it was contributing to a vision of a cleaner future. And in that purpose, I discovered something I'd long been denied: at home recognition. Not the hollow applause of family gatherings, but genuine respect. Little did I know this work would soon thrust me into a spotlight brighter than anything Ryan had ever chased. At first, my new role in London felt daunting. As Director of Strategy at a renewable energy firm, I was suddenly surrounded by brilliant minds from all over the world: engineers, policymakers, entrepreneurs. Our mission was bold: to design sustainable grids across Europe that could cut emissions and reshape entire cities. It wasn't just a job, it was a calling. I remember my first big meeting, nerves buzzing in my chest as I presented a plan for solar expansion in southern Spain. When my ideas sparked real discussion, I realized I finally had a seat at a table that mattered. The work was demanding far more than any spreadsheet or report I had done back in Boston. But that's what made it meaningful. I was no longer just steady and safe. I was making decisions that carried weight, decisions that could influence millions of lives. I thought of Ryan's failed ventures back home, each fueled by glamour but empty of grounding. My work wasn't glamorous. No velvet curtains, no champagne openings. Yet here I was, shaping policies that could light homes, power hospitals, and change the way nations viewed energy. Quiet work, but transformative. One lesson I learned quickly is that purpose doesn't always announce itself with fanfare. Too often we assume meaningful careers must look like headlines, founding startups, making millions, dazzling the public. But real purpose often lives in the unseen. It's in the late nights analyzing data that no one claps, for the careful negotiations that never make Instagram posts. Purpose is steady, sometimes silent but powerful. And once you feel it, you understand why applause is so overrated. Respect and impact last longer than any moment of spotlight. That's something my family never understood, but I was finally living it. I met colleagues who echoed my journey. One had left behind a glamorous career in fashion to work on wind turbines in Denmark. Another had walked away from Silicon Valley's money chase to focus on clean water projects in Africa. Their stories reminded me that fulfillment rarely comes from what dazzles the outside world. It comes from choosing work that aligns with your core values. In their company, I felt seen in a way my family never managed. For once, I wasn't the boring one. I was part of a global team building something that actually mattered. The deeper I stepped into this purpose, the more the outside world began to notice. Articles mentioned our project's investors called us innovators, and invitations to speak began to arrive. At first, I brushed them off, not wanting the spotlight. But eventually, I realized the platform wasn't about me, it was about the message. Sharing our progress could inspire others, and that realization opened the door to a recognition I never sought, but soon couldn't ignore. And that recognition would eventually carry my name back across the ocean, straight into the ears of the family I had left behind. The recognition came quietly at first in the form of an email. Forbes had listed me among Europe's 30 under 35 innovators in energy, and my CEO handed me the draft of the article with a proud smile. I sat there staring at my name in print, hardly believing it. Invitations followed, first a local conference, then the World Economic Forum in Davos. Suddenly, the steady, quiet work I had poured myself into was making waves. My colleagues celebrated with me, but deep down, I felt something heavier brewing, because I knew news like this had a way of traveling home. I wasn't wrong. Within days, my phone lit up with calls and messages from numbers I hadn't seen in months. My father's voicemail carried pride he had never shown me before. "Princess, the club is buzzing with your name." My mother's messages shifted from tears to triumph. "Darling, we always knew you had it in you." Even Ryan reached out, his tone casual, as if we'd just spoken yesterday. He congratulated me, then pivoted quickly to an idea he had for a new eco-friendly startup, one he thought I could easily connect to investors. The old patterns were alive and well. This sudden warmth felt less like love and more like opportunism. It was jarring, but also strangely predictable. I thought about a friend in London who had grown up in a similar dynamic. She told me how her estranged family suddenly showed up once her bakery business was featured on television. "They only remembered my name when other people started praising it," she said. Recognition, I realized, often doesn't change broken relationships. It only exposes them further. When value is tied to status, affection becomes conditional. That truth hit me harder than any headline ever could. The lesson was clear: external recognition doesn't heal internal wounds. No magazine article, no conference spotlight could erase years of being unseen. My family's pride was loud, but it came too late and for the wrong reasons. What I had longed for as a child, being noticed for who I was, had little meaning when it arrived, only after the world validated me. Recognition from strangers can open doors, yes, but recognition from family should never come with strings attached. That realization gave me both peace and sadness. It confirmed what I already knew: the applause back home was never really for me. And so, as I prepared for my keynote at Davos, I silenced my phone once more. I couldn't stop my family from calling, but I could choose not to answer. The world was opening its arms, while the past was knocking at the door I had already closed. I knew then that another choice loomed ahead, the choice to finally set firmer boundaries. Because if success had taught me anything, it was this: the more visible you become, the more urgently you must protect your peace. And that choice would define the next chapter of my story. I knew the calls wouldn't stop, so I did what once felt unthinkable: I blocked Ryan's number. It wasn't out of spite, but out of necessity. Every time his name flashed on my screen, I felt the weight of manipulation creeping back. Blocking him was like closing a door that had been left open too long. Next, I updated my emergency contacts, removing my parents for the first time in my life. It was painful, but freeing. For years, they had turned emergencies into leverage. This time, I chose to place my safety in the hands of people I truly trusted. Life grew quieter, lighter. Mornings in London took on a new rhythm. I would walk by the Thames with a coffee watch, the city wake up and feel the peace of not carrying a constant storm in my pocket. Boundaries, I realized, aren't walls meant to keep people out. They are gates designed to let the right people in. I thought of a colleague who had cut ties with her toxic sibling after years of verbal abuse. I didn't lose a sister, she told me. I gained peace. Her story mirrored my own, reminding me I wasn't alone. It's a common belief, especially in families, that blood is thicker than water. But I've learned that sometimes blood can drown you. Many people stay entangled in unhealthy family dynamics because they fear judgment. What will others say if I distance myself? Yet the truth is, protecting your mental health is not betrayal. It is survival. Studies even show that individuals who set firm family boundaries often experience less anxiety and greater confidence. My life was living proof. Each step I took away from dysfunction was a step toward wholeness, toward the life I had fought to create. The lesson here is simple, but often overlooked. Love without respect is not love. If someone repeatedly ignores your boundaries, dismisses your voice, and treats your worth as negotiable, then you owe it to yourself to step away. That doesn't mean bitterness, it means clarity. It means recognizing that peace is priceless and no amount of guilt or pressure should convince you otherwise. For years I believed that saying yes made me good and saying no made me selfish. But in truth, saying no was the most loving thing I had ever done for myself and even for them. Still, setting boundaries didn't end the story, it prepared me for what came next. Because while I had found peace in London, the world's spotlight was still growing brighter. With each project completed, with each stage, I stepped onto the distance between who my family thought I was and who I had become stretched wider. And soon I would find myself not just protecting my peace, but standing firmly in a new definition of success, a definition they could neither rewrite nor take away. That moment was waiting just around the corner in the biggest speech of my life. Standing on the stage at the World Economic Forum, looking out over leaders and innovators from every continent, I felt a sense of calm I had never known at home. I spoke about energy sustainability and the power of quiet progress, but underneath the technical details, my story was speaking too. The story of a girl once dismissed as boring, now shaping the future of an entire industry. Every applause echoed louder than the silence I grew up with. Not because it was recognition from strangers, but because it proved that steady, deliberate effort truly changes the world. As I stepped off that stage, I thought back to the kitchen in Boston where my mother once called me selfish. I remembered the shadow years when Ryan's sparkle blinded everyone to my light. I remembered the breaking point, the suitcase waiting in my room, the one word that shifted everything. No. And then London, the stumbles, the growth, the discovery of purpose. Piece by piece, those moments built the woman who could stand on the stage without shame, without apology. My journey had never been about spotlight. It had always been about strength. What I've learned is simple: family expectations don't define your future. Golden children may dazzle, but resilience outlasts charm. Boundaries are not cruelty, they are clarity. And stability, so often mocked as dull, is actually the foundation for greatness. These truths carried me from invisibility to impact, from being the dependable shadow to becoming the architect of change. And if they could carry me here, they can carry anyone willing to trust their own path, even if it means walking alone at first. That's the heart of my story, and perhaps the heart of yours too. So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt pressured to sacrifice your dreams for someone else's? Have you ever been told you were selfish for choosing yourself? If so, you are not alone. Thousands of people carry that same weight quietly, wondering if they're wrong to want more. I'm here to tell you you're not wrong. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. It's strength. And when you give yourself permission to grow, you also give the world permission to benefit from your gifts. That's a truth worth holding on to. If my journey resonates with you, I'd love to hear yours. Share it in the comments because your story might be the encouragement someone else needs. And if you believe like I do, that steady progress and strong boundaries can change lives, then join this community. Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let's keep building a space where courage is celebrated. Together we can remind each other that worth isn't measured by applause, but by the life we choose to build for ourselves.